Avoidance and love, why they push you away but still want you. How many of you have ever been in a relationship where one moment the person seems deeply connected to you and the next they're pulling away? 1 minute it feels like you're everything to them, and the next you're questioning if they even care at all. Sound familiar? Let me tell you something. This isn't about you. It's not that you're not good enough. It's not that they don't love you. This is about something deeper, an invisible force inside them that keeps them from fully surrendering to love. You see, avoidants have been trained, yes, trained, to believe that closeness equals danger. Maybe it was an emotionally unavailable parent. Maybe it was being shamed for having needs. Maybe it was betrayal. But somewhere along the way, their nervous system linked intimacy to threat. And when something threatens us, what do? Fight or flight. And in love, their instinct is flight. But here's the catch. Pushing you away doesn't mean they don't want you. It means they're battling the very thing they crave the most. Deep, unshakable love. They pull away, but they stay connected. They disappear, but they return. Why? Because their soul is screaming for connection. Their heart wants what their mind fears. And this inner war creates cycles of hot and cold, passion and distance. But here's what I need you to hear. This pattern will not change with force. You can't chase them into loving you. You can't logic them into feeling safe. The only thing that shifts this dynamic is understanding, patience, and an environment where they feel love without feeling trapped. So what do? How do you love an avoidant without losing yourself? First, you step into your own power. You become so rooted in self-love that their distance doesn't shake you. You create a space where they feel safe, not suffocated. You communicate from a place of strength, not fear. And you hold boundaries that say, I love you, but I will not abandon myself to keep you. Because love isn't about chasing, it's about attraction. And when you stand firm in your energy, when you become a person who radiates confidence and security, you stop being something they fear and start being something they gravitate toward. So if you've ever felt rejected by an avoidant, I want you to remember this. It's not about you. Their wounds are not a reflection of your worth. Your job is not to fix them, chase them, or convince them to stay. Your job is to be so strong in your own love that you become the very energy that calls them in, rather than the force they need to run from. And when you do that, that is when love finds its way back to you. Avoidants push away love, not because they don't want it, but because they fear it. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of avoidant attachment. When people experience an avoidant partner distancing themselves, they often internalize it, believing they are unworthy or that something is wrong with them. But the truth is, an avoidance behavior has nothing to do with the worth of the person they are with, and everything to do with their internal programming. Avoidant attachment is not a choice. It's a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. To understand why they push love away, we have to go back to the root. Most avoidants develop this attachment style in childhood. They grew up in environments where emotional needs were not fully met, where expressing vulnerability might have led to rejection or even punishment. Maybe they had caregivers who were emotionally distant, overwhelmed, or unpredictable. Maybe they learned that being too close meant being controlled, suffocated, or disappointed. Either way, their nervous system adapted to protect them from emotional pain. Imagine a child who cries out for affection but is met with coldness or indifference. Over time, that child learns that vulnerability is not safe. They stop reaching out, stop depending on others, and start finding security in self-reliance. Fast forward to adulthood, and now intimacy triggers that same subconscious fear. Love requires opening up, trusting, depending on someone else. And to an avoidant, that feels like stepping into a battlefield with no armor. When an avoidant falls in love, they are drawn to connection just like anyone else. They desire love, they crave it, they may even dream of it. But the moment they start feeling too close, an alarm system inside them goes off. Their body and mind react as if they're in danger. They don't even consciously recognize what's happening. They just feel overwhelmed, suffocated, or trapped, and their instinct tells them to withdraw, to create space, to regain control. This is why avoidants can be deeply affectionate one moment and distant the next. It's why they can express love but then suddenly shut down. They're not trying to play games. They're not trying to hurt anyone. They are responding to a fear that has been wired into them long before they ever met you. Their mind equates closeness with a loss of self. And so they run, not because they don't care, but because they care so much that it terrifies them. One of the most confusing aspects of avoidant behavior is that they often still want the connection. They may push away physically or emotionally, but they rarely sever ties completely. Instead, they maintain a cycle of distancing and returning. The reason is simple. Their heart and mind are in conflict. The heart craves closeness, but the mind fears it, so they pull away to reduce the anxiety that intimacy brings. But once the distance is created and the fear subsides, they feel safe enough to return. This is where many people get caught in the avoidance cycle, mistaking the pushing away as a sign of a lack of love, and the returning as proof that love is still present. The reality is that both are true. Avoidants love deeply, but they fear deeply as well. And until they address the underlying wounds that make closeness feel like a threat, they will continue to repeat the same pattern. It's important to understand that avoidants are not broken, nor are they incapable of love. They simply have a different way of relating to intimacy. Their love may come with walls, with distance, with hesitation, but it is still love. It is love wrapped in fear, love wrapped in self-protection, love wrapped in a need for space. For those who love an avoidant, this can be incredibly painful. It can feel like rejection, abandonment, or coldness. But knowing that their distancing is rooted in fear rather than a lack of care can shift the way you interpret their actions. It allows you to see their pushing away not as personal, but as a survival strategy they've relied on for years. It also helps you understand that chasing them, pressuring them, or demanding more closeness will only activate their defenses further. The paradox of the avoidant is that while they fear intimacy, they also fear losing the person they love. This is why they often give mixed signals, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They want connection, but they don't want to feel consumed by it. They want love, but they don't want to feel like they are losing themselves in the process. Understanding this truth can bring a sense of clarity. Instead of seeing their withdrawal as proof that they don't care, you can start recognizing it as their internal battle. And when you stop personalizing their behavior, you gain the power to navigate the relationship with more strength, more patience, and more understanding. Their nervous system has been wired to see intimacy as a threat. This is not a conscious decision, nor is it something an avoidant person can easily change through willpower alone. It is a deeply ingrained response that has been shaped by past experiences, often beginning in childhood. Understanding this is key to making sense of why avoidants behave the way they do in relationships. The human nervous system is designed to protect us. When we experience danger, it activates our fight or flight response, preparing us to defend ourselves or escape. For most people, this system is triggered by physical threats, being chased, feeling unsafe, or sensing immediate harm. But for avoidants, the same system gets activated in response to emotional closeness. Their bodies interpret deep connection and intimacy as something dangerous, something to be wary of. This fear of intimacy is not always obvious. Avoidants may enter relationships enthusiastically, enjoy spending time with their partner, and even express love and affection. But as the connection deepens and emotional intimacy grows, their nervous system begins to detect a perceived threat. Suddenly, what once felt good now feels overwhelming. Their body starts sending signals of discomfort, tightness in the chest, restlessness, anxiety. Their mind begins to rationalize their fear, coming up with reasons why they need space, why the relationship isn't working, or why their partner is too much. They might even start finding faults in the relationship that weren't there before. This reaction is not logical. It is instinctual. It bypasses rational thought and triggers an automatic response, just like touching a hot stove makes you instantly pull your hand away before you even think about it. Avoidants don't wake up one day and decide to fear intimacy. Their brains have been programmed to see closeness as something that might lead to pain, loss, or control, and so they react accordingly. But how does this wiring happen? In many cases, it starts in childhood. When a child reaches out for comfort, love, or emotional support, they expect to receive warmth and security. But if they are met with coldness, rejection, inconsistency, or neglect, their nervous system learns that expressing needs is not safe. Some children learn this when they have emotionally unavailable parents who are physically present but emotionally distant. Others experience it through inconsistent caregiving, where love is sometimes given but other times withdrawn. Over time, they develop a coping mechanism, emotional self-sufficiency. They tell themselves, I don't need anyone. Depending on people leads to disappointment. It's safer to rely on myself. As they grow older, this belief solidifies into an automatic response. Whenever a romantic partner gets too close, their nervous system perceives it as a risk. It doesn't matter if the partner is loving, patient, and kind, the avoidance body still reacts the same way because it has been trained to protect them from emotional vulnerability. One of the most frustrating things about this response is that it often contradicts what the avoidant actually wants. Many avoidants deeply desire love, connection, and security, but their wiring works against them. It's like trying to drive a car with one foot on the gas and the other on the brake. They may enjoy moments of closeness, but as soon as it starts to feel too intense, their body panics and tells them to pull away. This is why avoidants are often misunderstood. To the outside world, their behavior can seem cold, detached, or even manipulative. But in reality, they are not trying to hurt anyone. They are simply following the only relationship pattern they know. Their nervous system reacts before they can even process what is happening. For their partners, this can be incredibly painful. When an avoidant withdraws, it often feels like rejection. It can seem like they don't care, don't want love, or intentionally creating distance. But the truth is, their avoidance is not about their partner at all. It is about their nervous system trying to keep them safe. Understanding this can shift the way people interpret their behavior. Instead of taking their distance personally, it helps to see it as an automatic response they may not even be fully aware of. Avoidants are not broken, nor are they incapable of love. Their nervous system has simply been wired differently, and until they become conscious of this pattern, they will continue to react in the same way. Changing this wiring requires deep inner work. Learning to recognize when fear is taking over, challenging old beliefs about intimacy, and slowly retraining the nervous system to see love as safe. For those in relationships with avoidance, patience and understanding are key. It's important to recognize that their fear of closeness is not about a lack of love, but about a deep-seated survival instinct. Trying to force them into intimacy or chase after them when they pull away will only reinforce their fear. Instead, creating an environment where they feel safe, respected, and not pressured to connect can help ease their defenses. Over time, avoidance can rewire their response to intimacy, but this process takes awareness, effort, and most importantly, a willingness to heal. Until then, their nervous system will continue to treat love as a threat, even when it's the very thing they desire the most. Pushing you away is not a rejection of you, it's an internal battle they're fighting. This is one of the hardest truths to accept when you love someone with an avoidant attachment style. When they pull away, it can feel deeply personal, as if you did something wrong, as if they no longer care, or as if they are intentionally creating distance. But the reality is much more complicated. Their withdrawal is not about you, it's about them. It's about a war going on inside them, a struggle between their desire for love and their fear of it. To understand this, we need to look at the core fear of avoidance, the loss of autonomy and the fear of being overwhelmed in a relationship. Many avoidants grew up in environments where they felt emotionally suffocated, criticized, or controlled. Others may have experienced neglect or inconsistency, leading them to believe that closeness is unreliable or even dangerous. As a result, they developed a deep need for independence as a way to protect themselves. This independence is not just a preference, it is a survival mechanism. When an avoidant starts to feel deeply connected to someone, their internal alarm system goes off. Their mind starts telling them, this is too much, I need space, I'm losing myself, and their body follows, triggering anxiety, restlessness, or even a sense of suffocation. At that moment, their instinct is to withdraw, not because they don't love their partner, but because they are trying to regain a sense of control. This is why avoidance can seem affection and present one moment and then distant the next. When they feel safe, they enjoy the connection. They might even open up, express love, and make plans for the future. But as soon as the relationship starts feeling too close, their fear takes over. It's not that they stop loving their partner, it's that love itself starts to feel like a threat. And so they do what they've always done. They create distance. For the person on the receiving end, this behavior can feel like abandonment, can feel like the avoidant is pushing them away because they don't care. But this is not the case. In fact, many avoidants feel intense guilt and confusion about their own behavior. They don't understand why they feel the need to pull away from someone they love. They may even want to stay close, but their fear overrides their desires. This internal battle between wanting closeness and fearing it creates a cycle. They pull away to reduce their anxiety, but once they are at a safe distance, they start missing their partner. They remember the love, the connection, and the good moments, and they begin to crave that intimacy again. And so they come back. But once they get close again, the fear returns and the cycle repeats. This hot and cold dynamic can be incredibly confusing, both for the avoidant and their partner. The partner may wonder why they keep being pushed away if the avoidant truly cares. They may try harder, chase, or demand answers, which only makes the avoidant withdraw even more. What's important to realize is that this pattern is not about a lack of love. It is about a deeply ingrained fear response. Another key point to understand is that avoidants often don't know how to express their emotions. Because they have spent so much time suppressing their feelings, they may not even be aware of what they're truly experiencing. When they feel overwhelmed, they may not say, I'm scared of losing myself in this relationship. Instead, they might say, I just need space, or I'm not sure about this relationship. Their words can be misleading because they are not always in touch with their deeper emotions. This is why trying to get clarity from an avoidant can be frustrating. They may not have the answers you're looking for because they don't fully understand their own behavior. Their actions are driven by unconscious fears rather than rational thought. And until they become aware of this internal battle, they will continue to repeat the same patterns often without realizing why. So what does this mean for someone in a relationship with an avoidant? The most important thing to remember is not to take their withdrawal personally. Their distance is not a reflection of your worth, your attractiveness, or how much they care about you. It is a reflection of their internal struggle. If you try to chase them when they pull away, you only reinforce their fear that relationships mean losing themselves. Instead, the best approach is to give them the space they need while maintaining your own sense of self. When they see that they can have closeness without being suffocated, their fear begins to subside. But if they feel pressured, controlled, or obligated to stay close, their instinct will always be to run. Ultimately, the battle avoidants are fighting is not against their partner. It is against their own past, their own fears, and their own nervous system's reaction to intimacy. They are not rejecting love, they are struggling to accept it without losing themselves in the process. And until they learn to recognize this battle for what it is, they will continue to push away the very thing they secretly desire the most. Their love is real, but it is filtered through fear. This is one of the most difficult things to understand about avoidance. When they care about someone, their feelings are genuine. Their love is not fake, temporary, or shallow, but the way they express love is shaped by the fear they carry inside them. Unlike people with secure attachment styles who find comfort in closeness, avoidants experience intimacy as something risky, something that could lead to pain, suffocation, or loss of self. Because of this, they love in a way that is guarded, hesitant, and sometimes even contradictory. At their core, avoidants desire connection, just like anyone else. They are not emotionless, nor are they incapable of deep feelings. In fact, many avoidants feel love intensely, but they struggle to show it in a way that their partner can recognize. Their fear of being too vulnerable causes them to hold back, to limit how much of themselves they share. They may say they care, but struggle to show it through consistent actions. They may engage in acts of affection, but then withdraw before things get too deep. This is not because they don't love, it's because they are terrified of what love might mean. Avoidants are often afraid of losing control in relationships. For them, emotional closeness can feel like stepping into an unpredictable space where they might be hurt, rejected, or consumed by another person's needs. Their subconscious mind tells them that the closer they get, the greater the potential for pain. This fear doesn't just exist on a mental level, it's deeply wired into their nervous system. When they start to feel emotionally close, their body reacts as if they are in danger. Their heart rate might increase, their thoughts become scattered, and an overwhelming need to escape takes over. As a result, their way of loving is shaped by self-protection. They might love from a distance, expressing care in subtle ways rather than grand romantic gestures. They might avoid deep conversations about feelings not because they don't have emotions, but because expressing them makes them feel exposed. They might downplay the importance of relationships, not because they don't value them, but because admitting how much they care makes them feel vulnerable. This can be incredibly confusing for their partners. When someone loves an avoidant, they may feel like they are always trying to guess what the avoidant truly feels. They may wonder why, if the love is real, it doesn't feel more secure, more present, or more open. The answer lies in the avoidant's fear. Their love is real, but it is filtered through layers of defense mechanisms designed to keep them safe. One of the biggest struggles avoidants face is balancing their need for independence with their desire for love. They often associate relationships with losing themselves, with having to sacrifice their freedom or emotional stability. So even when they love deeply, they may still create distance to maintain a sense of control. This leads to an internal contradiction. They crave connection, but they also fear what that connection might take from them. This fear-driven approach to love often results in mixed signals. Avoidants may act loving one moment and distant the next. They may initiate closeness, but then pull away when things become too intimate. This is not because they are playing games or being manipulative. It is because their emotions and fears are in constant conflict. When they feel safe, they allow themselves to express love, but as soon as the relationship starts to feel too intense, their defenses activate and they retreat. For their partners, this cycle can feel frustrating and painful. It can feel like they are being led on, like they are constantly fighting for reassurance, or like their love is not enough to make the avoidant stay. But the reality is that the avoidance struggle is not about their partner, it is about their own unresolved fears. It is also important to recognize that avoidants often struggle with their own emotions just as much as their partners do. Many avoidants experience guilt and confusion about their behavior. They may want to be present and emotionally available, but their instincts tell them to withdraw. They may not even fully understand why they act the way they do. They only know that relationships make them feel overwhelmed. Despite their fears, avoidants are capable of deep and meaningful love. But in order for that love to thrive, they must become aware of their own patterns and learn how to manage their fears rather than letting their fears control them. Until they do this, their love will always be filtered through a lens of self-protection, real but restrained, present but distant. They crave connection but fear the cost of closeness. This paradox defines the emotional world of avoidance. On one hand, they desire love, intimacy, and deep relationships just like anyone else. They long for someone to understand them, to support them, to share their lives with. They may even fantasize about finding that perfect partner who will love them unconditionally. But at the same time, they are terrified of what that closeness might require of them. The moment they begin to feel truly connected, a deep-rooted fear starts to rise, warning them that getting too close means losing something: freedom, independence, or even their sense of self. This fear doesn't come from nowhere. It is often a result of past experiences, many of which go back to childhood. An avoidant person may have grown up in a home where emotional needs were not consistently met. Perhaps they had parents who were distant, critical, or unpredictable, making them feel like relying on others was unsafe. Or maybe they were raised in an environment where closeness was overwhelming, where love felt suffocating instead of supportive. Over time, they learned to associate intimacy with discomfort. They trained themselves to be self-sufficient, to depend only on themselves, and to avoid emotional reliance on others. Because of this, relationships are a battlefield of conflicting desires for them. They want connection, but they don't want to feel trapped. They want love, but they don't want to be consumed by it. They want to be close, but they fear losing control over their emotions. This push-pull dynamic is not something they consciously create. It is their nervous system reacting to a perceived threat. When an avoidant begins to feel close to someone, their fear kicks in. Their mind starts creating reasons to justify distance. They might suddenly feel like the relationship is moving too fast, even if nothing has changed. They might start focusing on their partner's flaws, convincing themselves that the relationship isn't right. They might even create conflicts or withdraw emotionally, not because they want to hurt their partner, but because their fear of intimacy is stronger than their ability to stay present. So the way they navigate this fear varies. Some avoidants keep their relationships casual, avoiding deep emotional entanglements altogether. Others engage in relationships but always maintain an emotional wall, never fully allowing themselves to be vulnerable. And then there are those who enter deep relationships but repeatedly sabotage them when the fear becomes overwhelming. For their partners, this behavior can be deeply painful and confusing. One moment, the avoidant seems engaged and loving. The next, they are distant, cold, or even indifferent. This inconsistency is not because they don't care, it is because they are trapped between their desire for love and their fear of losing themselves in it. Many avoidants feel guilt about their own actions. They don't want to hurt the people they care about, and they don't enjoy the cycle of distancing and reconnecting. But for them, pushing away feels like survival. Their nervous system has been trained to protect them from closeness, even when that closeness is exactly what they crave. Some avoidants may try to manage their fear by creating boundaries, ensuring they never get too close in a way that feels threatening. They might keep emotional conversations to a minimum, avoid discussing the future, or insist on having space even when they are in a committed relationship. These behaviors are not about rejecting their partner, but about maintaining a sense of safety. The challenge is that their partners often interpret this behavior as a lack of love. When an avoidant withdraws, their partner might assume they have lost interest. When they hesitate to commit, their partner might believe they don't care. But the truth is, the avoidance actions are not about a lack of love, they are about fear. For an avoidant to change this pattern, they need to first recognize it. They need to become aware of the fact that their instinct to push away is not a rational decision, but an automatic response rooted in past experiences. Only by understanding this can they begin to challenge their fears and allow themselves to experience closeness without feeling suffocated. Avoidants are not incapable of love, nor are they doomed to repeat these patterns forever. But breaking free from the cycle requires conscious effort. They must learn to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. They must challenge the belief that closeness equals loss of self. They must slowly rewire their nervous system to see intimacy as something safe rather than something to be feared. But until they do this, they will continue to crave connection while fearing its cost. They will continue to love from a distance, wanting closeness, but resisting it the moment it starts to feel real. And they will continue to push away the very thing they desire most, not because they don't want it, but because they don't yet know how to have it without fear. Their silence doesn't mean they don't care, it's their way of protecting themselves. Avoidants are often misunderstood because their withdrawal and emotional distance can seem cold, unfeeling, or even cruel. But their silence is rarely about a lack of love. More often than not, it is a defense mechanism, a shield they put up to manage their own overwhelming emotions. When an avoidant becomes quiet, pulls away, or refuses to engage in deep emotional conversations, it is not because they do not care, it is because they are trying to protect themselves from the vulnerability that closeness demands. For many avoidants, emotional expression is uncomfortable, even foreign. They have spent much of their lives learning to suppress their feelings, to keep their emotions under control, and to rely on logic rather than vulnerability. This is often a result of early life experiences where expressing emotions did not feel safe. Maybe they were raised in an environment where emotional needs were dismissed, where they were told to toughen up or stop being dramatic. Maybe they experienced relationships in which vulnerability led to pain, disappointment, or rejection. Over time, they learned that it was safer to stay silent, to keep their emotions to themselves, and to avoid the deep emotional exchanges that others take for granted. So when an avoidant withdraws, when they stop responding, or when they refuse to engage in emotional conversations, it is not necessarily because they are indifferent. It is because their nervous system is reacting to what it perceives as a threat. Closeness for them is often linked to danger, the danger of losing control, of being hurt, or of becoming too dependent on another person. Their instinctive response is to retreat, to create space, and to regain a sense of emotional balance before they can re-engage. This is one of the most painful aspects of being in a relationship with an avoidant. Their silence can feel like rejection. Their distance can feel like abandonment. Their lack of emotional expression can make their partner question whether the love is real. But in most cases, their withdrawal is not a reflection of how they feel about their partner. It is a reflection of their own internal struggle. The problem is that silence can be misinterpreted. When an avoidant pulls away, their partner may assume they have stopped caring. They may feel the urge to chase, to demand answers, or to force a conversation. But these actions only trigger the avoidant's fears even more. The more they feel pressured to talk, the more they will withdraw. The more their partner demands emotional openness, the more they will shut down. This cycle creates frustration on both sides, one person feeling abandoned, the other feeling overwhelmed. Avoidants often wish they could express themselves differently, but they struggle to find the words. They don't always know how to articulate their emotions because they have spent so much time avoiding them. When faced with emotional intensity, they may freeze, unable to speak or process what they are feeling in the moment. Instead of expressing their fears, they shut down. Instead of admitting their vulnerability, they create distance. And instead of explaining their behavior, they remain silent, even when they know their silence is causing pain. This does not mean that avoidants are incapable of love. In fact, many avoidants feel deeply but do not know how to show it in ways that others can recognize. They may express their care through actions rather than words, through problem solving, through acts of service, through small, subtle gestures that indicate they're still present, even if they are emotionally withdrawn. But because they do not communicate love in a traditional way, their partners may not recognize these expressions for what they are. Understanding an avoidance silence requires patience and perspective. Instead of seeing it as a rejection, it helps to view it as a coping mechanism. It is their way of regulating their emotions, of keeping themselves from feeling overwhelmed. It is not always a sign that they want to leave the relationship. Sometimes it is simply their way of taking a break from the intensity of emotions they do not know how to handle. For an avoidant to move beyond this pattern, they need to develop the ability to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. They need to learn that expressing emotions does not mean losing control, that vulnerability does not mean weakness, and that love does not have to feel like a threat. This is not an easy process, and it requires conscious effort. But with awareness and practice, avoidants can begin to communicate in ways that do not rely on silence and withdrawal. At the same time, their partners must also learn how to respond to an avoidant silence with understanding rather than panic. Instead of chasing, demanding, or taking it personally, they can give the avoidant space while maintaining their own sense of security. This does not mean tolerating emotional neglect. It means recognizing that avoidants need time to process their emotions before they can re-engage. By creating an environment where the avoidant feels safe rather than pressured, the cycle of withdrawal can begin to break. Avoidants do care. They do feel love. They do desire connection. But their way of handling emotions is different, shaped by a history of self-protection. Their silence is not a lack of love, it is a survival instinct. And until they learn to replace that instinct with trust, they will continue to use distance as their shield, even when love is all they truly want. Healing is possible, but it requires self-awareness and conscious effort. Avoidants are not doomed to push love away forever. They are not incapable of deep, meaningful relationships, nor are they inherently cold or unloving. The ability to form healthy, secure connections is something that can be developed, but it requires intentional work. Avoidants must first recognize their patterns, understand where they come from, and take active steps to change the way they approach intimacy. For most avoidants, their behaviors are not conscious choices but deeply ingrained survival mechanisms. These patterns often stem from early experiences where closeness was associated with pain, suffocation, or rejection. As a result, their nervous system reacts to intimacy as if it were a threat. The first step in healing is acknowledging this pattern not with shame or self-judgment, but with compassion. They must see that their need for distance is not a personal failing but a learned response to past wounds. Only by becoming aware of these automatic reactions can they begin to rewire them. One of the biggest challenges avoidants face is learning to sit with discomfort. Intimacy, vulnerability, and emotional expression often feel unnatural to them. The instinct to pull away is strong, and the urge to retreat into solitude can feel overwhelming. But healing requires leaning into that discomfort rather than running from it. When the fear of closeness arises, instead of immediately withdrawing, they must pause, breathe, and remind themselves that they are safe. They must train themselves to stay present in moments where they would typically shut down. Developing emotional awareness is another crucial step. Many avoidants struggle to recognize their own feelings, let alone express them to others. They may dismiss emotions as irrational or unnecessary, preferring to focus on logic and self-sufficiency. But emotions are not the enemy. They are signals guiding them toward a deeper understanding of themselves and their relationships. Learning to identify, name, and accept their emotions without judgment helps them break free from the habit of suppressing or ignoring them. Communication is also a key part of the healing process. Avoidants often assume that withdrawing is the best way to protect themselves, but in reality, it creates confusion and pain for both them and their partners. Instead of shutting down, they must practice expressing their needs, fears, and boundaries openly. This doesn't mean forcing themselves into emotional conversations before they're ready, but rather taking small, intentional steps toward greater openness. Saying something as simple as "I need a little space, but I still care about you" can make a world of difference in breaking the cycle of withdrawal and misunderstanding. Relationships with avoidance can also improve when their partners understand their struggles. This doesn't mean enabling unhealthy behaviors or tolerating emotional neglect, but it does mean recognizing that avoidants are not pushing love away because they don't care. They are acting from a place of fear. When their partners can approach them with patience rather than pressure, with reassurance rather than demands, it creates a safer space for connection to grow. But ultimately, the avoidant must take responsibility for their own healing. Change cannot be forced from the outside, it has to come from within. One of the most transformative realizations an avoidant can have is that love and freedom are not opposites. Many avoidants believe that being in a relationship means losing themselves, sacrificing their independence, or becoming trapped. But true love does not suffocate, it expands. It allows both partners to be fully themselves while being deeply connected. Learning to trust that closeness does not mean control is a crucial part of breaking free from old fears. This journey is not easy. Healing attachment wounds takes time, patience, and persistence. Avoidants must be willing to challenge their own beliefs, to step outside their comfort zones, and to practice vulnerability even when it feels terrifying. But with consistent effort, they can shift from avoidance to security. They can learn to embrace connection instead of fearing it. They can allow themselves to love fully without the instinct to run. Healing is possible. It is not a quick fix, nor is it a straight path, but it is a journey worth taking. Because at the core of every avoidant is not someone who wants to be alone forever. It is someone who deeply desires love but has been afraid of it for far too long. And so we come to the heart of it all. Avoidants do not push love away because they don't care. They push it away because for so long they have been wired to see intimacy as a risk rather than a refuge. But the truth is, love does not have to mean losing yourself. Closeness does not have to mean suffocation. Relationships do not have to feel like traps. Healing is possible. Change is possible. But it starts with awareness. It starts with the willingness to challenge old patterns, to lean into discomfort, and to recognize that the fear of intimacy is just that, a fear, not a fact. Avoidants are not broken, nor are they incapable of deep, meaningful love. They simply need to unlearn the belief that love and safety cannot coexist. To those who love an avoidant, know that their distance is not a reflection of your worth. It is not because they do not love you, but because love has always felt like something they had to protect themselves from. With patience, understanding, and communication, you can help create a space where they feel safe enough to stay. And to those who identify with avoidance, this is not a life sentence. You do not have to keep running. You do not have to keep pushing away what you truly desire. The love you want is possible when you decide to stop fearing it and start trusting that true intimacy will never require you to lose yourself. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. If this message resonated with you, I hope you take it to heart, reflect on it, and most importantly, take action. Because the love you want is waiting for you. It's just on the other side of fear. Thank you.